I want to tell you a story. It will change your understanding of simple things like success, happiness, and what we've come to consider important. This story began in a small village tucked away among the hills where time flowed slowly and people lived as if tomorrow were just a gentle echo of today. But into this village came a man who made everyone pause and think, what if we're all wrong about what we truly want? His name was Lev. He arrived on one of those gray days when the sky feels heavy and the wind whispers of change. Tall, lean, with eyes that had seen more than words could convey, he stopped by the river that ran through the village. People didn't notice him at first. He didn't shout or demand attention. He simply sat on the bank, gazing at the water, muttering something under his breath. But here's the strange thing. Everyone who passed by felt something stir inside them. It was as if this man knew a secret they'd forgotten. "Who are you?" one of the locals finally asked him. A young man named Sasha, whose life revolved around working at the mill and dreaming of one day leaving for the city. "Me?" Lev smiled, not taking his eyes off the river. "I'm someone who seeks the truth, and you?" Sasha shrugged. "I just live, work, want something more." "Something more?" Lev repeated quietly as if tasting the words. "What if that more is already here and you just don't see it?" Sasha walked away, but those words lodged in him like a splinter. He told his friends about the strange man, and soon others began coming to the river. Lev didn't say much, but every word he spoke was like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples spread far. He asked people what they wanted and listened. Just listened. Then he'd say something that changed their faces. One wanted wealth, another a family, a third freedom. Lev would nod and ask, "And what are you willing to give for it?" You see, my friends, we often think success is something we take. Money, recognition, power. But Lev knew something different. He saw the world not as a storehouse of treasures, but as a mirror. And in that mirror reflected not what we have, but what we give. As people came to him, I noticed how they began arguing with themselves. The wealthy miller suddenly wondered why his gold didn't bring him joy. A young mother, dreaming of peace, realized peace wasn't the absence of noise, but something within her. And Sasha started coming to the river every day. One day, Lev called him closer. "You want something more?" he said. "But tell me, Sasha, what do you see in this water?" Sasha looked at the river. It was murky, swift, reflecting the gray sky and bare trees. "Nothing special," he replied. Lev nodded. "Now look deeper. What's beneath the surface?" Sasha peered closer. The water flowed, carrying leaves and small twigs, but beneath it was something else. A current, a force driving it all. "I don't know," he admitted. "Then come back tomorrow," Lev said, "and bring with you what you're willing to give." That night, Sasha couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, thinking about the strange man's words. What was he willing to give? His dreams, his fears, his time? He sensed Lev knew something that would turn his life upside down, and in that feeling there was anxiety but also hope. Because, my friends, sometimes we need to meet someone who asks the question we've been too afraid to answer ourselves. And that encounter by the river was the first step toward a strange truth Sasha didn't yet understand. Part 1. The Strange Man by the River. I want to tell you a story. It will change your understanding of simple things like success, happiness, and what we've come to consider important. This story began in a small village tucked away among the hills where time flowed slowly and people lived as if tomorrow were just a gentle echo of today. But into this village came a man who made everyone pause and think, what if we're all wrong about what we truly want? His name was Lev. He arrived on one of those gray days when the sky feels heavy and the wind whispers of change. Tall, lean, with eyes that had seen more than words could convey, he stopped by the river that ran through the village. People didn't notice him at first. He didn't shout or demand attention. He simply sat on the bank, gazing at the water, muttering something under his breath. But here's the strange thing. Everyone who passed by felt something stir inside them. It was as if this man knew a secret they'd forgotten. "Who are you?" one of the locals finally asked him. A young man named Sasha, whose life revolved around working at the mill and dreaming of one day leaving for the city. "Me?" Lev smiled, not taking his eyes off the river. "I'm someone who seeks the truth." "And you?" Sasha shrugged. I just live, work, want something more. Something more, Lev repeated quietly as if tasting the words. What if that more is already here and you just don't see it? Sasha walked in silence, but those words lodged in him like a splinter. He told his friends about the strange man, and soon others began coming to the river. Lev didn't say much, but every word he spoke was like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples spread far. He asked people what they wanted and listened. Just listened, then he'd say something that changed their faces. One wanted wealth, another a family, a third freedom. Lev would nod and ask, "And what are you willing to give for it?" You see, my friends, we often think success is something we take, money, recognition, power. But Lev knew something different. He saw the world not as a storehouse of treasures, but as a mirror. And in that mirror reflected not what we have, but what we give. As people came to him, I noticed how they began arguing with themselves. The wealthy miller suddenly wondered why his gold didn't bring him joy. A young mother, dreaming of peace, realized peace wasn't the absence of noise, but something within her. And Sasha started coming to the river every day. One day, Lev called him closer. You want something more, he said. But tell me, Sasha, what do you see in this water? Sasha looked at the river. It was murky, swift, reflecting the gray sky and bare trees. Nothing special, he replied. Lev nodded. Now look deeper. What's beneath the surface? Sasha peered closer. The water flowed, carrying leaves and small twigs, but beneath it was something else. A current, a force driving it all. I don't know, he admitted. Then come back tomorrow, Lev said, and bring with you what you're willing to give. That night, Sasha couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, thinking about the strange man's words. What was he willing to give? His dreams, his fears, his time? He sensed Lev knew something that would turn his life upside down. And in that feeling there was anxiety, but also hope. Because, my friends, sometimes we need to meet someone who asks the question we've been too afraid to answer ourselves. And that encounter by the river was the first step toward a strange truth Sasha didn't yet understand. Part 2. Gift or Sacrifice. 3 days had passed since that conversation by the river, and Sasha returned. In his hands, he held an old leather pouch containing all his savings, a handful of coins earned over years of working at the mill. He didn't know why he'd brought them, but he felt he had to give something. Lev sat in the same spot, staring at the water as if waiting for him. Did you bring what you're willing to give? Lev asked, not turning his head. Sasha nodded and held out the pouch. This is all I have. I saved it to go to the city. Lev took the pouch, weighed it in his hand, and handed it back. That's not what I meant, he said. Money is just a thing. I was talking about something greater. Sasha frowned. Then what? I don't understand. Lev smiled. A smile that made people feel both foolish and like students. Sit, he said. I'll tell you something. And so, my friends, began the second chapter of this story. Lev told Sasha about a man who lived long ago in a distant land. His name was Ilya, and he was a wealthy merchant. He had everything, a house with high walls, servants, caravans full of silk and spices. But one day he noticed that the more he had, the less he slept at night. His heart clenched with the fear of losing what he'd amassed. So Ilya decided to give it all away. He distributed his wealth to the poor, abandoned his house, and went to the mountains. People laughed at him, called him mad. But in the mountains, Ilya found something gold couldn't buy. Peace. Do you think he sacrificed everything? Lev asked. Sasha nodded. But I'll tell you, he lost nothing, Lev continued. He gave up what held him captive and gained freedom. Do you understand? Success isn't what you hold in your hands. It's what you can let go of. Sasha paused. He looked at his pouch and thought about the city, the dream that had seemed so clear. But now a crack appeared in that clarity. He asked, what if I let go of my dream? What's left then? Lev shrugged. You'll only find out if you try. But here's a hint. Give not what you have, but what you're afraid to lose. That evening, Sasha went home, but Lev's words rang in his head. He began to notice how much of his life was ruled by fear. Fear of staying in the village forever. Fear of not living up to his father's hopes. Fear that the city wouldn't give him what he expected. The more he thought, the heavier his soul felt. But in that weight was something alive, something pushing him forward. The next day he returned to the river. This time he brought nothing but a question. "Lev," he said, "I'm afraid that if I give up my fears, I'll lose myself. Who am I without them?" Lev looked at him, a spark flickering in his eyes. "Do you think your fears are you?" he asked. "What if they're chains you've put on yourself? Take them off, Sasha. See what happens." That night, Sasha did something he'd never done before. He sat by the window, gazing at the stars, and for the first time allowed himself to imagine a life without fear. He didn't know what it meant, but he felt something inside him begin to breathe. And in the morning, when the sun rose over the hills, he knew he had to return to Lev. Because, my friends, in that moment, he glimpsed a flicker of a strange truth. Success isn't about conquering the world, but conquering yourself. The next morning, Sasha walked to the river with a lightness he'd never felt before. The sun was just rising, painting the hills gold, and the air was fresh like after rain. But in that lightness, there was also unease, as if he were walking a thin thread over an abyss. He didn't know what he'd find at the river, but he felt there was no turning back. You see, my friends, sometimes we don't realize how deeply the past pulls us until we dare to face it. Lev was waiting, as always, sitting by the water. This time, he wasn't looking at the river, he was looking at Sasha. And in that gaze was something new, something that took Sasha's breath away. "You came," Lev said, "and I see you've brought more than last time." Sasha was surprised. "I didn't bring anything with me." "You're wrong," Lev replied. "You brought yourself. That's already something." They sat together and Lev began to speak. He told Sasha about a woman named Anna who had lived in the same village years ago. Anna was known for predicting the weather, healing the sick, and finding lost things. People came to her for help, but no one knew that every night she sat by her window and wept. She feared her gift was a curse, that it had stolen a simple life from her. And one day, Anna left the village, abandoning everything she knew. She thought that by fleeing her past, she'd find peace, but her past followed her like a shadow. "Why couldn't she let go?" Sasha asked. Lev ran his hand over the ground as if drawing something invisible. "Because she thought her past was her. But the truth is the past is just a story we tell ourselves, and we can change that story if we want to." Sasha fell into thought. His past was simple. Work at the mill, a stern father, dreams of the city. But the more he reflected, the more he saw how that past held him. His father always said, "You have to work to become someone." And Sasha believed that without work, without struggle, he was nothing. That thought was like a stone around his neck, one he'd carried his whole life. "How do you let go?" he finally asked. Lev pointed to the river. "See how the water carries the leaves away? It doesn't hold on to them. It flows, and whatever it doesn't need drifts off. Be like the river, Sasha. Let go of what pulls you back." That day, Sasha sat by the water long after Lev left. He watched the current sweep branches away and thought about his father. He remembered how his father praised him for hard work but never asked if he was happy. And for the first time, Sasha realized that the voice in his head, his father's voice, wasn't his own. He could choose a different path. It was frightening, but in that fear was freedom. That night, he felt no burden for the first time. He went to bed with the thought that tomorrow he'd start anew. But in the morning, when he arrived at the river, Lev was gone. In his place lay a small bundle, a piece of cloth with a note, "Find me in the mountains." Sasha understood that his journey was just beginning, and in that realization, my friends, was a strange truth. To let go of the past is to find yourself. Sasha stood by the river holding the bundle. The note was brief, but Lev's words echoed in his mind. The mountains. He knew which ones, the tall, silent peaks visible in the distance beyond the hills. People rarely went there, they said only the wind and wild beasts lived among them, but Sasha felt he had to go. Sometimes, my friends, we don't choose the path, it chooses us. He gathered some food, took an old jacket and the walking stick he'd made as a boy. The village watched him leave with curious eyes. Some whispered, some shook their heads. The miller even said, "You're throwing everything away for some wanderer?" Sasha smiled and said nothing. He knew they wouldn't understand. Success to them was sacks of flour and coins in a chest. He was seeking something else. The journey to the mountains was long. At first, the path wound through a forest where the trees whispered in the breeze, then it climbed higher where the air grew cold and thin. Sasha walked alone, but he didn't feel lonely. He noticed small things, a bird flying overhead, stones glinting in the sun. And with each step, he felt he was leaving something behind. Not possessions, but thoughts, fears, doubts. On the third day he saw Lev. He was standing on a slope, gazing down at the valley. Sasha approached, out of breath, and sat beside him. "You came," Lev said. "I didn't know if I'd find you," Sasha replied. "You found more than me," Lev said. "Look down." Sasha looked. The village seemed tiny from here, a handful of houses, smoke rising from chimneys, the river a thin thread. He saw his life from above, and it looked so small. "Everything looks different from here," he said. "Exactly," Lev nodded. "Success isn't what you see down there, it's what you see here, inside yourself when you climb higher." They spent the day in the mountains. Lev showed Sasha how to find water in the rocks, how to listen to the wind. He spoke little, but each word was like a seed falling into Sasha's soul. That evening by the fire, Lev told another story about a man who spent his life building a tower to rise above everyone. But when he finished, he realized height meant nothing if he was alone. He was looking for the wrong thing, Lev concluded. "And you, Sasha, what are you looking for?" Sasha was silent for a long time. He stared at the fire and thought about the village, the mill, the city, and suddenly he realized none of it was his. He was searching for himself, not a job, not a dream, but who he could become. "I want to know who I am," he said at last. Lev nodded. "Then you're already on the way." That night, Sasha gazed at the stars. They were brighter than in the village, closer as if he could reach out and touch them. And in that sky, he saw a reflection of the strange truth Lev was trying to show him. Success isn't a destination, but a journey. But when he woke in the morning, Lev was gone again. This time he left no note. Sasha was alone in the mountains, and in that solitude was something greater than he'd expected. Sasha woke in the mountains, and the silence embraced him like an old friend. The fire had long burned out, leaving only gray ash, and Lev was nowhere to be seen. No tracks, no sound of footsteps, just the wind wandering between the rocks and the distant cry of an eagle. Sasha didn't feel the fear he might have once. He felt something else, an emptiness that didn't frighten but called. You know, my friends, sometimes silence speaks louder than words, and in it we hear what we've long drowned out with the noise of our lives. He decided not to look for Lev. Something told him the man had left for a reason. Sasha gathered his things, a bit of bread, a flask of water, his walking stick, and pressed on into the mountains. He didn't know where he was going, but he felt he had to keep moving. The sun climbed higher, lighting a path that twisted between cliffs. The stones beneath his feet were cold, but each step warmed his chest. He walked and thought about what he'd left below, the mill, the village, dreams of the city, and for the first time those thoughts didn't pull him back. On the second day, he found a cave. It was small, sheltered from the wind, with smooth walls as if carved by time. Sasha stepped inside and sat, leaning against a rock. The silence here was deeper, almost tangible. He closed his eyes and listened. At first nothing, just the beat of his own heart. But then he heard a voice, not Lev's, not his father's, not anyone from the village. It was his own voice, quiet but clear. It asked, "What do you want, Sasha? Not for others, not for the city, but for yourself?" My friends, we rarely ask ourselves such questions. We chase what's been imposed on us, work, family, success. But what if those are other people's voices? Sasha sat in the cave and thought. He remembered how, as a boy, he loved watching the clouds and making up stories. How he once found an injured bird and nursed it until it flew away. Those moments were his, not anyone else's. And suddenly he realized he didn't want the city or wealth, but that freedom to be himself. He stepped out of the cave as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The mountains stretched before him, endless and silent. Sasha breathed in the cold air and felt something inside him unfurl, like the wings of that bird he'd once saved. He didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time he didn't need to know. He just walked, and each step was his own. On the third day, he saw Lev again. He was standing at the edge of a cliff watching the sunset. Sasha approached and sat beside him in silence. They sat for a long time without speaking. Finally, Lev turned to him. "Did you find it?" he asked. "I don't know," Sasha answered honestly, "but I hear myself." Lev nodded. "That's the beginning. Success isn't about finding all the answers. It's about starting to ask the right questions." The sunset painted the sky crimson, and Sasha felt that moment was his. Not someone else's, not a dream from the past, but here and now. But when he turned to say something, Lev was gone again. This time, Sasha wasn't surprised. He realized Lev wasn't just a man. He was a mirror in which Sasha saw himself, and in the silence of the mountains he found a strange truth. Success isn't what you take, but what you hear within. Sasha spent a few more days in the mountains. He didn't count them. Time flowed differently there, like a river in no hurry to reach the sea. He slept under the stars, drank from streams, listened to the silence. And with each day he felt lighter, as if shedding an invisible burden. He didn't search for Lev, didn't wait for him. He knew Lev had left, giving him something greater than words. My friends, sometimes we don't need a teacher to move forward, just a push. When Sasha decided to return, the mountains bid him farewell with a gentle breeze. He descended toward the village, and with each step he saw the world around him change. The forest rustled welcomingly, the river gleamed in the sun, and the hills didn't seem so tall anymore. But the greatest change was in himself. He didn't return as the boy who dreamed of the city or the young man afraid of being nothing. He came back as someone who knew what he wanted. The village greeted him quietly. People looked at him with curiosity, but no one asked where he'd been. The miller nodded as if nothing had happened. His father met him at the house, hugged him silently, and said, "You're back." Sasha smiled. He didn't explain that he'd returned as someone different. Some things don't need to be said. They're visible in the eyes. He started working at the mill again, but now everything was different. He didn't chase money or dream of something far off. He found joy in the simple things, in the sound of the water, the smell of freshly ground flour, the conversations with people. And when someone asked why he'd gone to the mountains, he'd reply, "To understand that I don't need to leave." One day a boy from the village came to him, thin with big eyes. "They say you were with that strange man," he said. "What did he teach you?" Sasha paused. He could have told him about Lev, the river, the silence in the cave, but instead he said, "He taught me to listen to myself, and what do you hear inside?" The boy hesitated, then smiled and ran off. Sasha watched him go, knowing that one day he too would find his own path. Time passed. Sasha didn't become rich, didn't move to the city, didn't build a tower to the skies, but people began to notice that they were drawn to him. They came for advice, for a story, for that look in his eyes that said, "You can be yourself." And in that, my friends, was the strange truth about success that Lev had revealed to him and he to others. Success isn't what you achieve, it's what you give to the world by being yourself. One evening, Sasha sat by the river where it all began. The water flowed as it had back then, carrying leaves and reflecting the sky. He watched it and thought of Lev. He didn't know where Lev was now, but he felt him nearby, in the wind, in the water, in the silence. And in that moment, Sasha realized the story wasn't over. It lived on in him. In every day, in every glance he offered the world. So my friends, that's what I wanted to tell you. This story isn't about becoming great or rich, it's about becoming yourself. And if you hear even a drop of truth in it, then perhaps tomorrow you'll look at your life a little differently. Because success isn't what you take, it's what you leave behind, like ripples on the water.